Hello, my friend. This is about being or becoming a crone. And it is an essay I have posted on my Substack, Emmy's Existential Substack. When women are fortunate enough to live beyond their 70 and 10, it is all too easy for them to feel disempowered, excluded, undervalued, and marginalized. From a feminist perspective, this phase can be seen as a time when the intersectionality of two forms of oppression come together. Being a woman, as well as being old, can seem quite problematic, especially if a more affirmative stance to this experience cannot be found. Feminist authors have demonstrated how this phase of life can easily lead to a sense of self-deprecation, meaninglessness, and loss of motivation. Studies have shown that self-esteem goes down with age in general, but more so for women than for men, and more so for working-class women than for middle or upper-class women. From menopause onwards, women frequently become acutely aware that their position in the world is altered. Because their youthful appearance, charm, and sexual appeal no longer provide them with a sense of intrinsic value. They feel more invisible than ever before. Additionally, if the woman has been a mother, she is likely to have come to the end of her caring years because her children will have flown the nest and have often settled elsewhere with their families. She can therefore no longer derive a sense of self-worth from motherhood. And at 70, if she is still caring for elderly parents, this will feel more like servitude than like something that can provide her with any credit or respect in the world. She may prolong her years of mothering by being an active grandmother, but this too will come to an end. If a woman has established herself in a career that makes her economically self-sufficient, these issues tend to be less impactful than if she is dependent on someone else's income for her sustenance and survival. What is, however, often left out of the picture is the extent to which a woman may be able to liberate herself at this stage from the straitjacket of society's expectations of her. The crone years may be the crowning years of a woman's life, a moment where, no longer driven by the need to please, care, or be attractive to others, she can finally focus on her own values and develop and evolve in a new direction. It may very well be that the phase of Cronedom, starting in a woman's mid-60s or 70s, brings a new liberation, where values like love, understanding, empathy, reciprocity, consideration, creativity, and liberation can come to the fore and define her existence anew. So, perimenopausal women in their late 40s and early 50s are often very concerned about the transformation they're going through. It's a difficult phase of life that confronts women with changes in their bodies and minds. They are no longer fertile, and the hormonal changes have an impact on the body, which is soon softening and spreading, whilst hair is thinning, wrinkles become more defined, and skin on chins, breasts, thighs, abdomen, and upper arms is sagging. Women are confronted with the dread of being seen as an old hag and find to their dismay that they are now much more easily overlooked, spurned, or derided in the world. They no longer attract the same male attention and are easily pushed aside by younger women too, so that they find themselves denigrated or degraded in public situations. This is made worse by many postmenopausal women dressing their age in somber, less vibrant tones in an attempt at hiding. It is as if women assume too often that once they have passed their prime, they must make themselves inobtrusive, invisible, and as self-effacing as possible. Perhaps the liberation of aging women is the final frontier to conquer for many women who are feminists, as was argued by the Beauvoir and Greer. Even though battles have been fought and won for equality, still in some professions, such as in acting or media work, the hospitality industry, or the retail industry, women find it hard to get decent employment after the age of 50. Women start to be afraid of being unwelcome, and many become much more self-conscious. This affects their well-being very negatively. The classic image of the crone is that of the woman in her 60s, 70s, or 80s. It is that of a sinister or even malicious older woman who is presented like a scary witch, bent over with straggly hair and fuzzy chin. The mythical concept of the crone is based in the French word for corpse, charogne, which refers to the aging woman's dwindling powers and decaying body. There are many tales of Baba Yaga, the Slavic myth of the powerful old woman who lives in the woods and eats children. The story of the witch in Hansel and Gretel is inspired by this myth. In the Bible, in Exodus 20:18, it is stated that thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. In consequence, witchcraft and sorcery, spells and herbal medicine have often been considered evil, for instance in the Middle Ages across Europe. Up to the 17th century, witch hunts and trials of women who were healers were common. It's well known that women were unable to defend themselves in any way once they had been marked as a witch. The tests they had to go through to prove they were not a witch invariably killed them. So it was too late. Being drowned or burned at the stake does not leave you with any prospect of justice or survival. The fictional play The Crucible by Arthur Miller about the 1692 Salem witch trials in Massachusetts, USA, is an astute description of the way in which paranoia and fear could be spread to point the finger at women who were seen to be disobedient to male power. Lynching and burning of witches were not, however, just a Western problem. They were also commonplace in sub-Saharan Africa, Nepal, India, Papua New Guinea, Saudi Arabia, and many other countries. And yet, there are also very different images of older women. There is, for instance, the Norse myth of Ellie, who impersonates old age and who, in the holy story of the Edda, defeats Thor. This is in line with the pagan image of the crone as being crowned with a halo of light and wisdom. Clarissa Pinkola Estes claims that the word crone comes from the Latin corona, meaning crown. In this version of Cronedom, the crone is a visionary who can see between the material and spiritual worlds. She is an elder who passes on knowledge and know-how and who holds strong against injustice because she embodies the mystery of life itself. There is a new ritualistic practice that some women like to go through in their 60s or 70s, claiming this new status of Cronedom. It's a celebration of the passage into old age called croning. Some women choose to take on a new name during the ritual and may decide to change their physical appearance in dramatic and colorful ways. These women see Cronedom as the most important phase of a woman's life. This is consistent with the perception in some cultures, for instance, Lakota or Navajo Indians, of elderly women as holding an important and loving role in society. In this position, they safeguard numerous things, such as holding knowledge of the roots of language and to pass the information through the generations. And they may have specific status as elder and occupy a leadership role so that they can share their wisdom about relationships and emotions. Also, easing bereavements and losses. Elderly women, like the witches, often hold culinary and plant wisdom, which they apply freely for alternative healing purposes. In this role, they may also keep the peace and hold family and clan members to truth, ethics, and religious rituals, as well as reminding people to apply the customary rules of kinship and hospitality. Women in these positions remind the group to foreground the education of the young and to attend to suitable support for those in need. They frequently practice arts, songs, and magic, and are at ease in accompanying people through funerals and other moments of transition. These habits still exist in some Western cultures too, but are not formalized in the same way. Some women have tried to revive such roles and have described the progression of a woman, i.e., an adult female human being, through life by borrowing from the Jungian tradition of archetypes. Jean Shinoda Bolen has proposed a sequence of 7 phases in her book Goddesses in Every Woman. Each phase has a positive aspect and a potentially damaging or dangerous side. So first comes the maiden, the young girl. This is the phase of girlhood, when the girl is curious and creative. She can, however, also be naive and therefore easily become a victim. Second stage is that of the lover, the phase of sexual maturity when a girl becomes a woman and discovers her own sensuality and passion. As the young woman makes relationships at this stage, she may also become clingy and might be seen as seductive or unreliable. And the third stage is that of the mother, which is the stage when a woman gives birth to her own children or looks after other children or animals or other people. It's when she discovers her instinct for caregiving and develops her inner capacity for radiating warmth and love. This may become a negative thing too, if the woman becomes invasive and overbearing in her giving, or if she martyrs herself to love. The fourth stage is that of the huntress, and it is the phase when the woman discovers that she is strong and free and is not dependent on others to provide for herself and her family. She's brave and daring, but may be seen as wild, fierce and hard as she affirms her power. After that comes phase 5, which is that of the queen, which is the phase when the woman has become confident in her own power and is therefore able and willing to be a leader of others. At this stage, she may be seen as controlling or jealous of the power and of the people she leads. Then comes the stage of the mystic, which is the phase when a woman has gone through a lot of life and experience and has reached the post-menopausal plateau where she finds calm in who she is and is confident in her intuitive insight and understanding of life. She may isolate herself from society and become a bit reclusive and selective, and may be seen as proud and superior. And finally, we come to stage 7, which is that of the sage. This is the true stage of Cronedom, when the woman has risen above her mystical phase, is simple, clear, wise, and has mastery of truth. At this point, she may be thought of as rather ethereal, airy, but she may also be considered to be strategic in her use of her new power of wisdom and love. In this scheme, Cronedom is strongly associated with the passage from mystic to sage. Jean Shinoda Bolen has also written a book about goddesses in older women that elaborates on this theme. What emerges when we start looking into what elderly women can do is that their role and their function is often that of mediating love and reminding younger generations of how to work in a loving state of mind and be with each other with a loving way of being. This is very much in line with Naomi Stadlin's book on grandmothers, Why Grandmothers Matter, in which she draws attention to the many things done by grandmas that remain unseen, unheard, and sometimes unnoticed, but are much missed with hindsight. We may well wonder whether love is often like this, modestly supplied without drawing attention to itself, and often taken for granted. This raises interesting questions. Is it truly unfair, as Germaine Greer so pointedly argued, that the system lionizes the silver-haired male while scorning his female counterpart as beyond use, pathetic, desiccated, desexualized, as a crone? Could it be, though, that women have still not dared to affirm love as the sacred principle that guides life, and that they have intimate knowledge and understanding of? Hélène Cixous, in her well-known text, The Laugh of the Medusa, suggests that woman must write herself. She must write about women and bring women to writing. Women have been driven away from this as violently as from their bodies. For the same reasons, by the same law, with the same fatal goal, woman must put herself into the text as into the world and into history by her own movement and her own storytelling. Cixous encourages women to take responsibility, write, and speak up. Women should take charge of their bodies and own them again if they want to create the necessary space to be themselves and to be seen and heard. It's not hard to see that this can be easier for older women who know from experience that nobody else is going to do this for them. Perhaps when women lose their fear of being criticized and assume their cronehood bravely, they can liberate themselves to put love and wisdom finally at the center of life. While the habit of folding and hiding and playing second fiddle can last into the final stage of life for many women, they can also surprise themselves and their families with that by giving up on their tendencies to please and be subservient. They can free themselves to stand up and claim their own way of life. This frequently happens after the death of a spouse, when a woman suddenly becomes aware that she is more powerful than she ever imagined. When she asserts this power benevolently, it turns out not at all to be about dominance, but about love. Sisu argues that women have become imprisoned by anti-love, which is imposed by patriarchy. It imposes binary structures on us. It stops us feeling the flow of our own embodiment, or prevents us from being ourselves and write about ourselves. The crone can rise above her life, the life she's lived, often in these suppressed ways. She is now in a position where she can express her capacity for love instead of trying to comply with the need to compete, fight, and show her ambition to win equality in the world of men. She no longer feels obliged to try to fit in or please anybody. She's liberated from the look of others. She's no longer enacting fertility or attractiveness. She's exempt from pretense. She's ready to look death in the eye, and she knows more than enough about death, which she has encountered in the death of her parents and other people around her, and she's sat with it. She's not afraid. She has learned to be with death. She's closely acquainted with both life and death, and still she knows that love is the answer to all the questions people ask. The crone knows that she's in the middle of a process of change and transformation. She trusts this process because she has perspective on the world, having so much experience of it, and she has learned to trust in life, which is always wiser than human beings. She has faith in her intuition and knows she needs to proceed with cooperation, generosity, and mutuality rather than by carrying on the male tradition of competition, rivalry, and winning. She allows herself to feel things deeply and take people's pain and sadness to heart without fear, because she knows it's the beginning of a transformation. She can shapeshift, as she now has many guises. She can still be like a girl, like a lover, like a mother, like a huntress, a queen, a mystic, or a sage. She can be any of these, or all of them, at any one time. She feels as ancient as the mountains, but she can open and blossom into a second spring. She knows how to breathe deeply and feel the joy of being. She knows how to appreciate and value what is good in life, to love it, to care for it, to nurture it and foster it. She also knows where her limit lies, and she loves to stand in awe when she admires a starry sky or a sunrise, for she values transcendence and infinity. She's not afraid to find a path into the beyond. The crone has ripened into her most complete self and is ready to harvest her wisdom, to distribute it before the end of her life. She is ready to let go of all regrets and resentments so that love can finally settle and grow in her heart without any remaining bitterness or sourness. But all of this is only possible if we have loved our lives, or at least have found a way to absorb everything that has happened to us, making sense of it, integrating it to ourselves instead of rejecting it, hating it, or wanting to be rid of it. If we have done this, if we have loved our lives in all its guises and all the people in it, truly, the lessons we have learned along the way will have strengthened us. Simone de Beauvoir, who spoke so eruditely about old age, was surprisingly reluctant to appreciate the gains of maturity. She saw death as an unjustifiable violation that she did not consent to. She said, old age is life's parody, whereas death transforms life into a destiny. In a way, it preserves it by giving it the absolute dimension. She rebelled against old age, which she saw as a time of being excluded and of revolt against this fundamental dispossession. De Beauvoir's conclusion was to carry on as if nothing had changed for as long as possible. She said, there's only one solution if old age is not to be an absurd parody of our former life, and that is to go on pursuing ends that give our existence a meaning. And in this respect, she's certainly right. But this is true for both men and women equally. What then gives life meaning to a woman when she's on the path to Cronedom and its apogee in death? Is it not exactly that we have been released from values that were relative to our biological tasks, and that we can now accept the laws of life that bring growth, flourishing, flowering, and seeding, as well as accept decline and decay, disintegration and decomposition? Cronedom is a time when we stand with Spinoza, looking at life under a species of eternity, observing the lawfulness of nature that brings us inner peace as we yield to the circle of life. Now we have perspective. We have a sense of perspective and balance about life and the world. We understand how to live our lives, how to treat others, and how to evaluate our actions in the world. We have learned to recognize our possibilities, and we are confronted very graphically, viscerally, and concretely with our limitations as well. we understand a bit about how things both belong and connect with each other, and where we fit into the huge, multi-dimensional jigsaw puzzle of life. We can live with deliberation and be open to what is actually the case. Nietzsche spoke of Amor Fati, the love of one's fate, the love of life. In his book Ecce Homo, he said, "My formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it. All idealism is mendacity in the face of what is necessary. But love it, my friend, love it as it is." What he meant was that it should be the human objective to love our destiny in all its manifestations, no matter what happens to us. His concept is related to the idea of the eternal return, which is a thought experiment in which we imagine ourselves reliving the exact same moment in precisely the same way into eternity over and over again. He thought that only if we set this standard would we comprehend the importance of seeing and experiencing life fully. This is what he meant by living in a loving way. Perhaps Hannah Arendt caught it even better with her concepts of the vita activa and amor mundi, which is the active life and the love of the world. Because Hannah Arendt had truly faced one of the worst experiences human beings have ever been through, the Holocaust of the Second World War, she concluded that we must face such evil head on and aim to understand it rather than merely condemn it or be afraid of it. To live the vita activa, the active life, is to remain engaged intensely and with dedication to the things that truly matter in this world, and never slip into complacency or special pleading for exemption. It is to keep creating a world and a civilization based on the good and never to give in to negativity. Amor mundi, love of the world, is in some ways its counterpart. It was something that was close to her heart. She wrote her doctoral dissertation on the concept of love in the philosophy of St. Augustine, under the well-known philosopher Karl Jaspers. He himself was an expert on what he called the loving struggle of relationships. Arendt had wanted to call her book, The Human Condition, Amor Mundi. Love was a central concept for her. She distinguished three kinds of love: love as desire, love of God, and love for one's neighbors. She connected the idea of love with the concept of natality, which is the idea that life is always renewing itself through birth and rebirth. Amor mundi is a specific kind of love. It is the capacity to care for the world despite its corrosion and horrors, and to trust in its renewal, and more than that, to be prepared to bring that renewal about. This sentiment is completely appropriate for the kind of love that becomes possible in our years of Cronedom. For it is the kind of love that has been tested and tried. It's not a naive, hopeful love, but a persistent love, an intense love that has been disappointed multiple times and that has become strong in its own fulcrum. The kind of Cronedom that leads to Amor Mundi is not the kind of Cronedom that flaunts an outrageous, colorful and glamorous, disgraceful kind of aging. It's the kind of Cronedom that ages gracefully towards much more seasoned and courageous ways of living, with love for a world that is often so dark, dissolute, despairing, and unlovable. This kind of love is a kind of earthy love, based in a mother's capacity to love all her children and her stepchildren, to love every aspect of her children, and to stand in the breach when disaster strikes or trouble arrives on the doorstep. It is the kind of love described by Aboriginal activists like Miriam Rose Ungunmerr-Baumann, who was the 2021 Senior Australian of the Year. In her acceptance speech, she reminded people of the practice of dadiri, deep and respectful listening to the inner spring of wisdom. She said, "If you stay closely united, you are like a tree, standing in the middle of a bushfire, sweeping through the timber. The leaves are scorched, and the tough bark is scarred and burned, but inside the tree, the sap is still flowing. And under the ground, the roots are still strong. Like that tree, you have endured the flames, and you still have the power to be reborn." This is very similar to the descriptions of love of the world by the Native American botanist Robin Wall Kimmerer, who wrote the highly successful book Braiding Sweetgrass. She said, "If all the world is a commodity, how poor we grow. When all the world is a gift in motion, how wealthy we become." In pointing out how much of the physical world has been destroyed and impoverished by our exploitation of natural resources instead of a careful tending to those resources, she made it clear that the alternative is a much calmer, all-encompassing awareness of the cyclical nature of life, which respects the gifts we are given in such a way that we love and pass on what we are given by the earth. This kind of love is essential to the future of humanity. It rests in the hands of the women in indigenous lore. A woman who has seen it all, and has done it all, can stand above crisis and destruction to get an overview. She knows how to reassure with facts and quiet certainty because she trusts humanity's capacity to rebuild safety, community, identity, and hope. Such women have a role to play, not just as individuals, but with society and civilization. Crones know that civilization is on the wrong track and that organizations, industries, and governments often have the wrong values of profit, greed, and competition. They know that this has percolated through to towns and villages and families too, and that much of what goes on in human relationships can be toxic. As soon as we begin to look at the world, we live from the perspective of a loving community. We immediately notice how wrong things have gone. We see exploitation over fairness, an emphasis on profit and productivity over a valuing of human creativity. We have become used to consuming goods instead of contributing and creating something from generosity. We measure success by achievements and short-term results, rather than by thinking about long-term viability and future consequences. We are keener to have our freedoms than our responsibilities, our rights rather than our duties and obligations. If society works mainly through encouraging competition rather than by enabling collective collaboration, it's hard to have a world in which there is a feeling that love holds us safely together and that we can have faith and trust in community, in life, in each other. We are used to be able to pursue our personal gain rather than being reminded of eternal values. It often seems as if fame and fortune are the worthiest objectives rather than learning to live in the right way with each other in a community. In such a world, excitement and distraction are the big attractors. Youthful experimentation is preferred over mature reflection, understanding, and love. Cronedom is a phase of life when women who have become sensitive to this distortion of social values can remind those around them of the importance of values like love, truth, beauty, loyalty, honor, friendship, courage, and freedom. This opens us up to a new kind of future, where we work not for ourselves, but for a community that will carry on after our death. This is something we cannot champion on our own. It is something we slowly generate together. In the matrix, where there used to be a community that was brash, competitive, and instrumentalist, we sow the seeds for a new future, which will unfold slowly as it is tended with love. Crones know how to create value and meaning, but they are not always sure that they have been given permission to apply their wisdom. Crones need to learn to claim both their right and their duty to remind civilization of its need to transform. They can do this by committed and engaged constructive action with each other and with good men who feel the same way, because mature men also become a bit like this. We become more alike to each other in our old age. It is a process that is engaged in a slow manner as we progress step by step, build the new framework brick by brick, and allow the love distilled from long lives to be returned to the world where it belongs, drop by drop. Crones will have to proceed diligently, no matter what challenges come on their path, by being undaunted in focusing on their new project of reminding the world of a loving way of being. They find new flexibility. They share their joy when they succeed to form new friendships and collaborations with others. This is a loving project to value all the things that have been neglected, but that matter greatly, and there is room for everybody's energy to come together. Each of us is important to it. It could form the basis of a new politics of collaboration and comprehension, rather than of the mere exercise of power, control, and dominance. This is precisely what Cronedom is about. The dissolution of power by love. This is when plurality is valued and merged into unity. The poem Fear, often attributed to Khalil Gibran, but probably not by him, speaks of the river which is about to join the ocean, and it is very much in tune with this sentiment. It reminds us that Cronedom is not reserved for women only, for it is a human experience of maturing. They say that before entering the sea, the river trembles from fear. She looks back at the path she's traveled from the mountain tops on the long winding road that intersects forests and villages. And before her, she sees the ocean, so vast that the entrance to it seems nothing but to disappear forever. The crone holds in herself the whole of human existence and connects to what is beyond it. She stands in and with truth. She's ready to let things be as they are and to love them in just the same way as she has learned to love herself and her life in all its imperfections. She knows her life is coming towards its end, and that all she has learned needs to flow out of her into the whole of humanity. She is merged with the river of life, and as the poem says, there is no other way. The river can't go back. No one can come back. In existence, it is impossible to go back. The river must take its chances to enter the ocean, because only then will fear disappear. The river will learn that it is not disappearing in the ocean, but becoming part of the ocean. Becoming like a river that merges into the ocean is to surrender to life. Through the work of contemplation and understanding, crones find deeper meanings and wider perspectives. They understand how everything fits together and how it is held together by the bonding agent of love. The crone stands at the liminal space between life and death. She knows that what is exactly what is right at this moment. This is how we know that we are entering Cronedom. When you are censorious, critical, proud, superior, and defensive, you are not fully ripened into Cronedom yet. If you want to be all-knowing and mysterious, you are not. If you are still worried about your own life and death, instead of seeing things from the perspective of the eternal return, you have not yet fully evolved into Cronedom. But that's fine. We all need to go the whole way, and it takes time. Wisdom comes to you when you grow wide and round like the earth and deep as the seas, ready to descend into the abyss without fear. Without fear. You will reach high to the skies. You will whisper with the four winds and be at ease in the dark of the forest. Knowing the lore of the land, the crone loves her life, the earth, the people around her, and life itself. She will pass on her wisdom to those around her and pass into eternity quietly when her time comes, because she knows that to merge with the ocean is her destiny, and that destiny feels right and true and good. Take care, my friend. You can read this essay on my Substack as well.